Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the World Map Podcast. We are live, and I'm your host, Josh, coming to you each week with everything in this world that could be on the map in terms of video games, comic books, movies, TV shows. If it's something that could be considered nerdy, techie, Trekkie, Star Warsy, video gamey, any of that stuff, we cover it all for you. And our show, if you're new to the show, go back and listen to some of the old episodes. They're pretty evergreen. We talk about a lot of cool topics each week. We talk about new games and old games that we've been playing in the segment that we call the backlog each week. And we cover all the latest news. We cover tips and tricks and life advice. We have a little bonus round from time to time with special topics. And we have a little section called We Have Hobbies, where we talk about non-gaming. Primarily, though, this is a show about gaming, and it starts each week with a little section that we call the backlog. So I'll be jumping right into that in just a moment. Want to congratulate one of my co-hosts, normally on this show, Nick, who is graduating today with his master's degree. And congratulations, Nick, from the World Map Podcast and in your fellow co-host here. And also unable to join us this week is Clark. Got some work commitments this weekend, unfortunately. So I'll be doing the show solo, probably a little bit of a shorter episode than usual, but not going to leave you guys without an episode each week because we know that we're seeing the folks downloading the World Map Podcast. So one thing I do want to do before we jump into the show real quick, I do see the download numbers. I see those of you who are listening to the show each week. And just want to ask you to take a quick minute, pull up on your phone, whether you're listening through the podcast app on an iPhone or you're listening through Stitcher or some other means, go to whatever service you're listening to us on and give us a review. Really would help us out. We don't have a lot of reviews yet, especially in the iTunes store. We need to get reviews to help with our discoverability and bump the show up in the rankings enough just to get seen by a few more people and gain that momentum so that we can continue to deliver the show, continue to make great content for you, continue to improve that content from week to week. So again, it takes just a couple of seconds. All you got to do, go in the podcast app, for example, search for the World Map Podcast. It'll pop up. You type, write a review. You tap 5 stars, hopefully. You don't even really have to write a review. You can tell me what your favorite game that you're playing right now is. Submit it, and you're done. Takes a really short amount of time, and it's a huge, huge help to us, and just really, really absolutely appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. So make that your little Christmas present to the World Map Podcast this week. And without any further ado, let's move right on to the backlog. So I do want to remind our live listeners, we do the show live each week, every Sunday afternoon, about 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Stay tuned to our Twitter at World Mapcast to get the full details on when we're going to go live each week and get the link to the live show. For those of you who are watching live this week, just want to remind you that the Q&A panel in the live Google Hangout on air is open, so feel free to submit your questions and comments throughout the show, and happy to respond to those and have a little dialogue going on here. But the first thing I'm going to talk about this week in the backlog that I played is the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, Elder Scrolls Online, of course, is the sort of spiritual successor to Skyrim. It's the Elder Scrolls game that came out after number 5, after Skyrim, and this is a massively multiplayer online RPG in that Elder Scrolls universe, but it's online. It has a little bit more of an MMO flavor to it, and they had a free-to-play weekend last weekend. Just after we finished up the show last week, I actually nabbed a code for that, got online, tried the free-to-play weekend. Mainly did it because they're going to be giving out $1 million to some lucky person who played during that weekend. I haven't heard if that winner has been announced yet or not, actually. So I don't know if I won or lost. Guesses are I probably didn't win. But hey, don't worry if I win. I'll still keep doing the show. Don't worry about that. In fact, I probably will just do nothing but the show. But I played Elder Scrolls Online, and it's a game that I had kind of wanted to try out previously because I am a big Elder Scrolls fan, big Bethesda fan, as everybody who listens to the show regularly knows. Been playing a lot of Fallout 4, so another Bethesda game there, very similar game, although set in a post-apocalyptic future as opposed to a fantasy medieval RPG style realm like the Elder Scrolls games. But big fan of these games, really love Skyrim, so I wanted to jump into Elder Scrolls Online for a while. I just never did, right? Because the idea of an MMO is a little overwhelming to me. It's not really my thing, but I did find when I was playing Skyrim back in the day, thinking, wow, it would be really cool if I could go through this like co-op with someone and we could be crawling through these dungeons and experiencing these twists and turns and surprises down in these dungeons together and finding these nooks and crannies and entrances into new hidden temples while we're exploring in mountains together. And I thought that would be a cool experience. And I still think that would be a cool experience. However, that's not really what Elder Scrolls Online is. I feel as though I'm not really just cut out for the MMO thing, because what I found is I'd be in this semi-large area of the world, and every time I would find like enemies to fight or something, there would just be lots of other people there with me, random people who I don't know, and they would be fighting, and they might be a higher level than me, so they would kind of steal my kills and all this kind of stuff like that. And I don't know. I felt a little bit like the whole Elder Scrolls Online thing was just not really for me. I'm just not an MMO guy. I'm getting messages here. I'm getting some pings from Clark, from my host Clark. Those of you who are regular listeners to the show, he's in some classes because he's an attorney, got to take these like continuing education classes to keep that up. And he's messaging me about he's about to have a class in real estate litigation tactics. So you have fun with that, buddy. You have a lot of fun with the real estate litigation tactics. We're going to talk about Elder Scrolls Online. So yeah, I think that I like that intimate, like co-op multiplayer experience, and I think I would like it in this RPG setting, in this Elder Scrolls world. But the MMO setting, where it's kind of messier, and there are lots of people around, lots of things going on, like people fighting the things that I'm trying to fight, and I'm trying to explore and take my time, but there's just people running around everywhere. It just feels a little haphazard, and it kind of like pulls me out of that feeling of exploration and story that I really like in these types of games. That being said, I thought the character creation was really cool for this game. I was playing it on PC, actually, and it's a perfect kind of game for it to play on a PC, and it looks beautiful, or as beautiful as a Bethesda game can look, and that's not a knock on Bethesda. Their worlds are huge and sacrifice a little bit in terms of graphic fidelity because of that, but it looks good even for a Bethesda game. It looks very pretty, and it has those skill trees and those classes and that classic RPG thing that I like that they do very, very well. Thought the story immediately pulled me in and had me interested in that world yet again. But just the MMO feel of it, mixed with the fact that the combat is still so janky, just so off kilter, that it's just not fun. I had the same problem with Skyrim until late game when it kind of grew on me. I just kind of got used to it, and the exploration and the fun that I'm having really overtakes like some of the bad mechanics, and it outweighs it because I'm having so much fun with other things. But in this case, where it's something where I'm just like jumping into it and just trying it for a day, it's not something that made me want to now pay for the game to continue to be able to play it after the free-to-play weekend, because that combat is just, I would click my mouse button and there's just such a delay when, my character's swinging the sword that she was wielding. And everything felt delayed and janky and bad and just didn't have like precision to it. And I feel like this game needs that a little bit, because the game is very dependent on sort of almost being twitchy and playing the stats game, mid-action. And so I really just can't recommend Elder Scrolls Online so much for the type of gamer that I am, but I can see where it's a type of game that people who enjoy MMOs would probably see this as a game that very much appeals to them, because I think it's a pretty solid game all around. just not so much for me. I'll be waiting until the Elder Scrolls 6 eventually comes out, hopefully, and play that probably on consoles. And hopefully that's a long time after Fallout 4, because I also don't think that I can handle two of these large Bethesda games that get kind of, even though they're fun, they get kind of tedious in places, and I just don't think I could handle two of them back to back in consecutive years. I kind of need a break from that kind of game before I'm ready to dive back into it again. So all the other games I played besides Fallout 4, continuing to play that. I've hit level 30, have many hours into that game. Still going to plan on platinuming that. I'm enjoying it mostly more and more the longer that I play it. Again, I've talked on the show, go back and listen to previous episodes. I've talked about some of the tediums and some of the complaints I have about Fallout 4, but I'm continuing. That's my core game that I'm playing right now still. And certainly will be for a good amount of time still to come. But I did try the latest Games with Gold games on my Xbox One. And that's because, if you remember with Games with Gold, it's not like PS Plus where you get all the games for that month free all at once. Instead, with Games with Gold, you get part of them in part of the month. Then you get some more games in the second half of the month. So I'm playing these latter games that have just more recently become available to Games with Gold, Xbox Live Gold subscription owners. So I'll talk first about the two 360 games that I played. So one being Sacred 3 on the Xbox for 360. This is another isometric, top-down RPG in the style of Diablo. Not a game that I've played before. I've never actually played anything in the Sacred series before. So I was very interested to try this, and it's kind of strange. It feels like both Games with Gold and PS Plus lately have been giving us a lot of these Diablo clone isometric RPGs. And I like this genre a lot, actually. If the menus are not overwhelming and the skill trees are very well done, I really like this type of game. I talked about Dungeon Siege 3 had some UI issues. I talked about how this Van Helsing game that we got had really bad UI issues, way too many layers of menus in that game. And it was also kind of a pseudo free-to-play microtransaction-y game, so that was kind of disappointing. I didn't think that the Gauntlet Slayer edition we got on PS Plus this month was quite robust enough, and it felt also like it doesn't scale appropriately based on the number of human players that you have. I would say of these Diablo clones that we've been getting lately, Sacred 3 is actually my favorite one out of all of them that I've played recently. I very much enjoyed Sacred 3. Not sure how I missed this one back in the 360 days. It's right up my alley. And the thing that I liked the most about it is it introduces this really cool execution mechanic that I've never seen before in a game of this type. And what happens in this game is if you damage enemies enough to kind of knock them down but not quite kill them, they get this icon over their head that says that they're available for execution. And you have a button, I believe it's actually the left trigger, that you can pull, and your character will kind of jump up in the air, slam down, and execute that enemy. And you can chain these executions together. So it's kind of like up in the air, pound, 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 and you're leapfrogging from bad guy to bad guy as you have enough guys knocked down. So you can chain together 4, 5, 6 executions all at once. This is in addition to your regular attack, your smash attack, and any magic and passive abilities that you have going on as well. The game plays much more quickly. A lot of these games suffer from playing a little too slowly. The character animations are kind of slow. It feels a little stiff. It's kind of hard to move around the screen and dodge enemies. There's a great dodge mechanic in this game. I really love the combat mechanics in Sacred 3 are some of the best I have ever witnessed in an isometric RPG before, and that execution mechanic is so absolutely satisfying. I love it. It was so fun to do. So at some point I want to circle back and play more of this game because just leveling up my character, the couple of levels that I was able to ping, I know that the more powerful this character gets, the more fun that she's going to be to play. Very cool game. Can't say the same for the other Xbox 360 game that we got through the backwards compatibility on the Xbox One for free this month, and that was Operation Flashpoint Dragon Rising. I've never played an Operation Flashpoint game either. That's one of the great things about these subscription services giving us free games every month is they kind of surface some of the lesser known franchises that a lot of times we don't really feel like are worth our money. And in the case of Sacred 3, it's like, wow, how did I miss this? In the case of Operation Flashpoint, gee, man, I'm glad that I never played this franchise before. This game is absolutely terrible. It's buggy, it's janky, it looks like a PS2 game, not an Xbox 360 game. The UI is horrible. The AI that you're supposed to be able to strategically command in this game, it's a first-person shooter, but it has some of those mechanics where you're supposed to be able to order your teammates around. They just don't work. They don't follow the orders that you're giving them. There's just nothing fun about this game. If you get hit like once in this game, you start bleeding out. You're supposed to be able to get a medic, I think. I kept pushing the medic button. None of my teammates would come and heal me. I don't know what was going on with this game, but I made it through, I think, the first 1.5 basically missions. It's just not good. It's just, you can't even see the enemies half the time. Like, they're just these random, like, low res bullets flying around, and you think you know where enemies are, and you're trying to order your teammates around, but they're not listening. I just immediately was turned off by everything about this game. It feels like Ghost Recon or one of those types of games if it was just executed really poorly. And just the fact that I know that there are games that do this much, much, much better out there made me wonder, like, why would I waste my time on playing this game actually any further? I will say the one cool thing about it that I got to do was call in an airstrike, and the way that the airstrikes are done in this game are pretty neat, but to be fair, they're not as cool as artillery strikes in Fallout 4, so I just went back to playing that. And then there was one more free game through Games with Gold, and that was Thief on the Xbox One. So is this one worth your time to download and install? I think it is. I probably won't spend a ton of time with it. It doesn't look like a current gen game. It doesn't look like what the Xbox One is capable of. It's graphically not very impressive. It's also very dark and brooding and not really the type of game that I like to play all that often. But I will say that I appreciate it for what it is. It's a competent stealth game, and the stealth mechanics and the things that you can do as far as climbing and sneaking and the things that it seems like you would be able to do later in the game, and just the different options and routes that you have are kind of neat. I did feel as though it was holding my hand way too much, though. Kind of the cues it gives you, as well as some of the icons and some of the dragging you along and using the narrative to sort of just point out, tell you exactly what to do. It felt a little too hand-holdy, even beyond what I would consider to be the initial tutorial period, past the prologue of it. The story was sort of interesting. I think that if anything compelled me to play any more of this game, it would be to sort of find out what's going to happen in this story. But I was really annoyed by the mechanic of this game where you're collecting jewels and gold, and kind of the whole point of this game basically is to steal things and sneak in and out of buildings and sneak past guards and steal jewelry and things of that nature, and valuables, masks, different things. But every time, take a game like Fallout or many other games, when you push the cross button or whatever button it might be over a item, it just materializes into your inventory. There's no animation with it, right? You just put your cursor there, push a button, you've picked that item up, right? It disappears. It's now in your inventory. And I appreciate what they're trying to do here with having like the character's arm reach out and grab the item. But it does this stupid thing where the camera sort of zooms in, it kind of jerks in, the arm comes forward, grabs the item, jerks back, and it takes a full couple of seconds for this animation to happen. So if you're trying to, search a desk, well, you've got like 6 drawers on that desk, 2 or 3 items laying on top of the desk. So you're going to be watching the same animation over and over and over again. And that's just one desk of one room in one house. So you can imagine how repetitive and annoying watching this animation gets and how boring it gets. And that was the main thing that turned me off of this game. I was like, I am not going to be able to deal with this for an entire game. So out of all 3 of these games that I talked about on Xbox, platforms. I think Sacred 3 was my favorite. It's the one that I feel as though I'll probably come back to at some point. The others are, Thief, I think for the right person who really likes stealth games, you might enjoy that game. Operation Flashpoint, don't even bother. Okay. That's going to do it for the backlog this week. Let's move on and call in the news motorcycle. All right, so we got a decent amount of news this week. We're going to burn through it real fast, though. So this week on the news motorcycle, we found out that ZeniMax Online Studios closed its Ireland offices, and that cut about 300 jobs. Now, this is the Elder Scrolls Online developers. So we just talked about Elder Scrolls Online in the backlog. Now we find out the developers cut 300 jobs, shuttered the studio that they had in Ireland. ZeniMax, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe they had to do this to cover the $100 million that they're going to give away to somebody. But this happens all the time in gaming. This isn't anything new. It's unfortunate when people lose jobs, obviously, but a lot of times the displacement, they're going to go on to the next studio that needs somebody with their skills. And this is how game development works. A studio stands up, they make the game. They hire and hire and ramp up and ramp up and ramp up more and more towards launch. And then after the game launches, obviously, they go back into, kind of more of a pre-production mode on the next thing. They don't need as many people working in the studio for that amount of time. So very cyclical, the game's business, but interesting that the Elder Scrolls Online developer has shuttered. I wonder, what other studios are working on ESO content, or if this signals somewhat of an end of new content for ESO coming in the near future. So we'll find out more about that. We did also hear other Bethesda news that they delayed their card game, The Elder Scrolls Legends, and this was supposed to be a video game card game akin to Hearthstone, but set in the Elder Scrolls universe using Elder Scrolls characters. This game has been delayed again by Bethesda. I'm sure we'll see it at some point, but not in 2015 as they originally had said we would. Maybe we'll give this one a try when it comes out, but it's hard to think that anything is going to be able to compete with Hearthstone at this point, given all the momentum that they have and the beloved characters that Blizzard has to draw on. But I'm interested to see how this pans out. Now, bigger news: Hideo Kojima announced this week with Sony that he has formed a new independent Kojima Productions, and he will be partnered with Sony to develop a console exclusive game. So that game is going to also, of course, come to PC, but will not be on Xbox and obviously not on Wii U. So Kojima now fully separated from Konami, and Hideo Kojima is going to be partnered with Sony on this next game to make it a console exclusive. He talked a little bit this week, too, around his departure from Konami. Of course, he is under a gag order as part of whatever agreement happened there. But he essentially said that, he's forming his own studio because he needs to be able to work on projects without having to fill out a piece of paperwork or give a presentation for every little detail that he wants to put into a game. And that when companies focus on profits first, instead of, on creativity and on making games, they are left behind in creating what's going to be the next frontier in gaming, and that they're ultimately doomed to fail. So I think Hideo is making the argument that if you focus on just making the games that they need to be, the profits will come. But if you try to, control your creatives a little bit too much and just focus on, safe measures, probably in the long run, you're not going to be that successful. And we've seen that in the games industry. And it's interesting that, Konami hasn't learned that lesson, but it's good to see that Hideo Kojima is able to now has broken free and created his own independent studio. I look very much forward to see what kind of announcement comes out of that. We've gotten, when other developers have left their longtime Japanese sort of companies that they had ties to, we saw Keiji Inafune leave and create Mighty Number 9, which is like Mega Man, but not Mega Man. That game yet to officially be released, but looks like it's probably going to be pretty good. We saw Koji Igarashi now making a game that Bloodstain, which is not a Castlevania game, but it pretty much is a Castlevania game. So it'll be interesting to see if what Kojima creates is sort of a pseudo version of Metal Gear, or if he does something completely different from what these other developers are doing when they leave their studios. and create something totally different. So I'm very excited to see how that is going to pan out. Now, in that same vein, we also saw this week that Konami posted job listings recruiting employees for a new Metal Gear game. I cannot believe, first of all, there could not be worse timing to post these job listings. And it specifically says in the listings that these are to work on a new Metal Gear game. Not only that, but we had all these reports a while back that Konami was like going to make, I think, Pro Evolution Soccer and like pachinko machines and whatnot, but that they weren't really doing AAA development anymore. Everybody thought that MGS5 would be the last Metal Gear game. I guess given how successful it was, Konami now wants to, make a cash grab for some more money out of that Metal Gear franchise. They still own that IP, obviously. Hideo Kojima doesn't own that IP, that franchise. But this just demonstrates a real clear lack of leadership and control at Konami. Mixed messaging. First they're not doing AAA development. Now they are. They sort of sever ties and treat Hideo Kojima like shit. And then now they're going to take the franchise that he pretty much single-handedly through his creative vision made what it is and try to hire new people in the same week that he creates his own independent studio and try to get another Metal Gear game off the ground. I guess maybe before they want to get something out the door before Hideo comes out with something better from his new studio. I don't know what they're thinking, but I can tell you that most of the hardcore gamers who follow gaming news are aware of this relationship and how Konami kind of screwed over Hideo Kojima. Of course, Jeff Keighley, dropped that bomb, kind of dropped the mic on Konami at the Game Awards this year. And so I think there's a lot of awareness. I think Konami may not realize how much awareness, because they've demonstrated that they're clueless. I don't think they realize how aware gamers are of how they've treated a beloved figure in the gaming community. And so I will be curious to see if people actually support Konami's next endeavor into the Metal Gear franchise. I, for one, will not be. I'm going to wait and see what Hideo does. I'm going to support Hideo Kojima, but I do not plan on giving Konami another dime after the way that they, treated their guy like that. It's just totally wrong the way that they did that. So and went about that and playing the legal game on him. So good luck to you, Konami, but I think you're destined to fail with this new Metal Gear, and I think the gaming community is going to show you what's what. Now, there was some other news that PlayStation VR, the external processing unit for PlayStation VR was seen by several people. The tech is supposed to come out in early 2016, so obviously it's out there kind of in the wild being demoed to people now. And some of these people have reported that the external processing unit for the PlayStation VR is about the size of an original Wii console. So the way that the PSVR is going to work is you're going to put this headset on your head. It's going to have some kind of cord that runs into this external processing unit, which then is going to plug into the PlayStation 4. So this thing is not going to be cheap, as we kind of already know. But the fact that you're going to have basically a whole extra console to plug into your console to run PSVR, I think just once again is another nail in the coffin for PlayStation VR. I think, it's already a tough sell, this technology. They have not done a good job of demoing it to the public. And now we know, it sounds kind of cool, right? If you could wear this VR like in bed or on the couch, make it sort of a mass appeal, casual thing that people can put on and play and enjoy good games on. But if I'm going to have to be tied to my PS4 and plug into this big bulky thing and plug it into another big bulky thing, I just keep seeing signs that make me feel PlayStation VR has a big hill to climb in terms of being successful. We'll see what happens, but this news is not comforting to me. We did have a Nintendo Direct where Bayonetta, Cloud, and Corrin from Fire Emblem were all announced as new DLC characters for Super Smash Bros. So I'm looking forward to downloading those when I get a chance, and especially trying out Cloud. And just a quick little announcement there. In other news, Microsoft delayed Fable Legends. So Fable Legends, of course, the spin-off. We haven't seen a Fable game since Fable 3 on the Xbox 360. And this Fable Legends game is supposed to be sort of a hybrid RPG real-time strategy game. It was originally pitched as kind of a dungeon master sort of game where one player is sort of controlling what is happening on the field of play, and other players are reacting to it. We haven't really seen a lot of this game in the press or at any Microsoft announcements. I don't even really recall seeing it at like E3 or anything like that. I'm not real sure that Fable Legends is poised for success. I don't think I've heard anyone say that they're like really sold on it or really behind the game ever since the game was announced many years ago. And to be fair, the Fable series has always been kind of a mixed bag. It's always been fun, but never really fully polished and really fully a 10. And I think a lot of people have just lukewarm feelings about the Fable series. And I think people would be more excited, though, still, despite those lukewarm feelings, people would be more excited about a Fable 4 than they are about this weird spin-off Fable Legends game. Of course, we did get that Fable game that was an on-rails kind of shooter made specifically just for the Kinect. So the franchise has already been watered down once. I see this as just watering the franchise down again, and it's not really what I've heard anybody say that they want. So bad signs, I think, that this game has now been delayed, and the open beta isn't even going to take place now until spring of 2016. So keep an eye on Fable Legends. I don't think it's something that at this point Microsoft would cancel. I think they've put too many eggs in that basket and hyped it up a little too much and put a little bit too many resources in it at this point. But I would be very surprised if Fable Legends comes out and is a big seller. One last piece of news this week is Ken Levine, and Ken Levine for Irrational Games and the BioShock series. Ken Levine's Boston studio is now recruiting people to work on his next game, which is going to be an open world game, according to the job listings. He previously said that this game might have a science fiction vibe to it, which wouldn't be too far off from what we saw in the BioShock series, but that also this game would have a non-linear narrative. So open world, non-linear narrative. I feel like that goes against everything that we know Ken Levine for. And to be quite honest, I don't think the BioShock games were actually that fun to play mechanically. And what made them what they are is the fact that they were linear and that they did use the narrative as a device to pull you through and immerse you in a world and throw some twists and turns your way. And the storytelling is really what Ken Levine does best. So I'm actually curious to see what comes out of this game. Obviously, it's very early stages at this point. We may not see it for another year or two. But I'm curious to see what happens here, because I feel as though what Ken Levine does best is linear storytelling, and this goes against everything that has been for him. It goes against his bread and butter so far. So again, a lot of skepticism for me this week on a lot of these news items. But again, skeptical about this one because say what you will about BioShock, the original BioShock. A lot of folks, it's their favorite game of all time, I think even. But those games are not good mechanically. They don't do anything revolutionary from a gameplay perspective. They're good because of the atmosphere and the narrative around them. And I think even the most recent entry in that franchise, BioShock Infinite, was probably the least successful at even doing that, because it tried to add in too many other things that were just sort of half-baked. So I think if Ken Levine really wants to be successful, he needs to double down on that storytelling that he's really good at. There may be a way to still do that non-linearly in an open world. We see Fallout 4 has pretty decent storytelling that you kind of do in a non-linear fashion and choose your own adventure. So maybe Ken can pull this off, and he's a smart guy, and if anybody can do it, I'm sure that he can. So stay tuned for more to see what happens there. And now we're going to talk a little bit about non-gaming in the segment we call We Have Hobbies. So this past week, it was Star Wars week, and I was lucky enough to see Star Wars at the earliest possible public showing last Thursday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern time in the evening. So I count myself among one of the very first people to see Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Episode 7. Wow, it was absolutely great. I won't spoil anything at all on this podcast. If you want to hear my full reaction, we have a short video segment series for the World Map Podcast called Map Key. It's on our YouTube channel. Go search for the World Map Podcast, Map Key number 3, Map Key episode number 3. And that is where I do my non-spoiler, complete 10-minute or so reaction to Star Wars The Force Awakens. And that was the morning after, when I woke up after seeing the film. Absolutely blown away. Again, not going to spoil anything, but I was absolutely blown away by The Force Awakens. I thought it was awesome. I thought, that the characters were, for as fast as that movie moved and as well as it kept attention and as much action as they jam-packed in there, they were still able to take the time to develop the new characters quite well, and felt like you cared about them and that you were invested in them and that you knew them. So I very much enjoyed the new characters. I thought the story, although the story was kind of didn't feel super original, it still, I didn't mind it because of just how well it was told, and how well the new and the old were married together. It felt like Star Wars. It felt nothing like the prequels. It had that sort of darker, grittier, more organic feel to it that the original films had. And just the struggles of the characters felt real. The emotion that was conveyed between some of these characters' relationships felt real. And the lightsaber battles were awesome. I mean, everything about it was awesome. The fact that we're seeing some younger people who aren't experienced in lightsaber battles, the fact that they didn't look like they were flipping around fully choreographed the way that we saw these old Jedi masters in the prequels doing, that it was a little bit sloppier and more like somebody picking up a lightsaber for the first time without any training, what you think they would fight like. So just from the action to the story to the characters to the humor, a surprising amount of humor. Graphically, it looked great. I love how there was the less CGI and more of the puppet use going on in this, and it was Star Wars through and through. It had the heart and soul of Star Wars. And yes, it left some things to the imagination. It did not explain every little detail to you, and I think you will come away with some questions. I think hardcore Star Wars fans will make a couple of correlations that you'll be really excited about, that'll have you absolutely pumped and already can't wait for episode 8 because of those correlations. And I don't think the film had to explain everything. I think at some point we will get the answers that we need in this new trilogy. And overall, very pleased with it. If I had any criticism of The Force Awakens, it would be that I might have liked to have seen more of some characters, older characters. I may have liked to have seen a little more from and then certainly they weren't just cameos for some of the characters that you're familiar with, but I would have liked to have just seen a little more importance put on some of them maybe, but there just obviously isn't time to do all of that in a film. And at some point, you kind of have to hand the reins to the newer generation of actors and that kind of thing. But I still hope in later episodes that we get to see a couple more surprises. I didn't feel like there's certainly surprises, and you should certainly go into this not having anything spoiled for you, because there are some sort of big momentous surprises. There are a couple, but nothing that was an unexpected surprise, I guess. Nothing that felt to me like jaw-dropping that I thought could never happen. And so I still hope that in this trilogy at some point we get one of those kinds of moments at some point, and maybe see some older characters maybe brought around to make that happen or something. But as a fan, I felt like it did really good fan service, and it did a great job of everything it set out to do, and love it. It's probably up there. I dare say that The Force Awakens might be my favorite Star Wars film now. I felt it was that good. Probably, I don't know, probably on par at least with Empire Strikes Back for me. Return of the Jedi might still edge it out slightly, but honestly, I'm going to have to see this movie many more times to know for sure. But it was so good that it is in contention for that. And the soundtrack, absolutely phenomenal. Of course, John Williams, yet again, blowing it out of the water. And did just want to make a note that the soundtrack for The Force Awakens is on Spotify. So I was listening to that this morning. So if you're a Spotify user, you can go check that out. And that's going to about wrap us up for this week. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, kind of a shorter show this week, but we covered the backlog. We've covered all the important news of the week and talked a little bit about Star Wars. We'll have to do a Star Wars spoiler cast and talk a little more in depth about The Force Awakens sometime in the coming weeks. But that's gonna wrap us up this week. As I mentioned at the top of the show, really appreciate it if you go give us some iTunes reviews. It takes just a couple seconds. If you want to get your questions and comments read on the show, send us an email at worldmapcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram as World Mapcast. And hey, just also tell a friend about the show if you're enjoying it. Maybe ping a friend on a text message, whatever. Tell them, hey, check out this show. It's awesome. I really enjoy it. Go listen to it, and we would appreciate that as well. Until next time, guys, we're popping smoke, and may the Force be with you.